following the Supreme Court's judgment of Thursday that nullified the election of Bayelsa State Governor-elect David Lyon and his running mate over forged certificates, the Nigeria's electoral body, INEC, has now presented a certificate of return to the People's Democratic Party's candidate, Senator Douye Diri, and his deputy, Senator Lawrence Ewhrudjakpo. INEC Chairman Mahmood Yakubu said Diri was declared the winner after top officials met on Friday morning to review the results of the election without the votes of the APC, which have been voided by the court.
Indeed, the total votes cast after excluding those of the APC now stand at 146,999. The PDP polled 143,172 and scored 25% as required by law. For an extensive discussion on the Bayelsa politics, we have in the studio a political analyst, Gbenga, Onitilo. But first, let's take a look at this video.
In compliance with the orders of the Supreme Court, the Commission met this morning and reviewed the result of the election in which 45 political parties contested. Without the votes scored by the All Progressives Congress, APC, whose candidates were deemed not to have participated in the election, the total number of lawful and valid votes cast in the election now stands at 146,999. Out of this figure, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party scored the highest number of lawful votes with 143,172. Similarly, the party has scored more than 25% of the lawful votes cast in all the 8 local government areas of the state. Consequently, Senator Douye Diri and Senator Lawrence Ewhrudjakpo of the PDP are hereby declared winners and returned elected as Governor and Deputy Governor of Bayelsa State, respectively.
All right, we're talking about the politics of Bayelsa and the developments there in the last week. Gbenga Onitilo is a political analyst joining us to discuss this.
Let's just add that a lot has happened after that. After that particular,
yes.
Governor Diri, who was governor-elect at that time, has now been sworn in yesterday evening.
Yes, let's see it.
I'm not sure, maybe we can have that. Maybe we should just go straight into the conversation, Ngozi.
Okay. Gbenga, good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me here.
Let's start with your thoughts generally on what's been going on in Bayelsa State in the last 1 week. First, a governor-elect in the person of David Lyon was already rehearsing to, be inaugurated as the next governor of the state, only to discover that he wasn't going to be inaugurated. Now you have a different person based on Supreme Court's
I think part of the things that that first caught me is that when you go across the whole country, Imo State, Zamfara, now you have Bayelsa, we are getting to a stage where it's no longer the votes of the electorates that determine who comes to power. It's now the judiciary, and it's a threat to any stable democracy where it has to be the judiciary that determines. So the politicians obviously have messed up the structural, everything structural, because we have not paid also attention to the reforms that need to be done. So now let's just go in swiftly into it. I think APC did themselves in. Last year, November, during their primaries, there was INEC Chairman, I've forgotten. INEC Local Berry, that was the state's Minister for State for Agriculture, who was the person that was being, everybody was rallying around him. They believe he's the best candidate suited. But when the primaries went on, I think the Minister for, I've forgotten, what's the name of this Minister for Petroleum, State for Petroleum Resources?
It's Per Silva?
This candidate was Lyon, that was never known by anybody. That was the person at tip. So the guy won by landslide the primaries, but the guy's deputy that's the cause of the whole thing. They had 5 different names in 5 different certificates.
Mr. Deggy.
The name on primary certificate was different from the name of secondary, was different from the name of the master's, first degree, discharge certificate, 5 different names. And people are trying to blame INEC. I'm not blaming INEC for that. It's the party. Because prior to then, there was a court case that was going on that said there were irregularities in the documentations is submitted. So the thing has been happening since. So this party knew.
So you agree with the Labour and Employment Minister, Festus Keyamo, who said there is a need for the APC to actually look inwards?
Yeah. So the APC goofed in not being able to look at regularizing, or when the court issue came up, it said documentation, but INEC still went ahead. Why did INEC go ahead? When you submit documentation, you still have to do a sworn affidavit to validate all those things. So that's what INEC relies on, the sworn affidavit. So it's not the responsibility of INEC in itself to say they're going to validate, but because we have submitted a sworn court affidavit, INEC relies on that. So which means this guy has even committed perjury. It's a crime in itself. It should be arrested. So APC in itself does not have a good internal mechanism to ensure that there's a balance of play, there's fairness.
Okay, this has come to the APC as a rude shock, and
it's not a rude shock.
It is a rude shock. From the comments the national chairman, Adams Oshiomhole, is making, you can tell that they've not even taken this.
I would rather listen to Festus Keyamo than listen to the chairman.
Okay, so
talking like an activist.
My question is, when you look at what has happened in the 2019 election cycle for the APC, and I'm talking about Rivers State, I'm talking about Zamfara, and then now Imo, do you get the sense that the ruling party has the ability to introspect and make that decisive decision to say, enough is enough? As a party, we have to put our acts together. Do you get that sense at all? It's
beyond the party putting itself together. It's about the electoral reform that needs to be done. Whether that party puts itself together or not, if we don't do the electoral reform that happened under the 8th Assembly that was put to the president, and the president had concern about some issues, so you had concern. But there's a major part of that reform, if those things had been done, we wouldn't have been having all the issues that we are having. These were the things that also came up during the tribunal for presidential election, the issue about servers, ballot boxes, validation, credits, what do you call it? Certification, a whole lot of issues.
But you would recall that, pre-2019 election, the President Buhari, actually said that he was not going to put pen to paper as far as the electoral act is concerned, because the confusion would set in as to which electoral law would guide the 2019 elections. But one would have expected that, having been sworn in now and, so-called hitting the ground running, and having been sworn in as president, that he would have looked at the electoral law again to, just sign it off.
I think APC as a ruling party is not focused on any systemic reform. It's just about grabbing power. Because the statement from Oshiomhole even shows that they were not going to allow anybody to be sworn in after a Supreme Court had made a declaration. So you're just focusing on power. You're not focusing on being a Democrat. You're not focusing on issues at play within your party that will allow somebody that has 5 different names to come in. That we are not allowing true democratic process to take place within your own party, where one man will say, "I will bring a candidate that is unknown." Lyon is unknown.
Okay.
So they also need to ensure their own party, the democratic process is in the interest of all, fair play, transparency, accountability. That's happened during their primary, and this is what has led to. It affected them also in Zamfara, Imo State, Ogun State.
Rivers. What would be your advice going forward? Like I said, the APC doesn't seem to have taken this in good faith. When you look at the comments of Adams Oshiomhole, national chairman, who says this has been an illegal action by INEC for declaring Douye Diri the governor and swearing in yesterday. It says the commission appropriated judicial powers to itself over the ruling. And a lot has happened.
Misread the judgment of the Supreme Court.
We've seen fracas in Bayelsa State. The police has now declared dusk to dawn curfew for 3 days. But the governor sworn in yesterday also had that beautiful speech about extending the olive branch, about
reconciliation.
Bitterness and all of that. But what's your advice to the APC, the PDP, and the people of Bayelsa at this time?
Look, I'm talking about a systemic reform. I'm not even singling out. All the things you are saying are just symptoms of a more deeper issue. it will keep happening. And the reform of the electoral act must be done. It must be paid attention to. This Ninth Assembly must pay attention. If there are elements, there are several elements within it that are good. If we can pay attention to that reform, I don't want us to be focusing on symptoms. All the things happening are just symptoms of the guidelines, the act not being in order. If things are in order, we won't be having all the issues that we are having. And the president now, he's not president. He's not going to come back. So now he wants to leave a legacy. Jonathan left a legacy of being a true Democrat. Whether we want to agree with him or not, we might say he's an inept, we might say whatever. But he showed himself to be a true Democrat. The question we should be asking is, the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari and the legacy of APC as a ruling party, they control the Senate. They control the House of Rep right now. What legacy are they going to leave in terms of what they do with the electoral act in the interest of all?
Okay, let's put your thoughts on hold. Gbenga Onitilo is speaking with us on developments in Bayelsa State. Yes, the state now has a new governor, but against very, very troubling backdrop. We'll take a short break and return. Stay with us.
Glad to have you back. You're still watching the Morning Show here on the Rise News, and we're discussing Bayelsa politics, the development in that state. Gbenga Onitilo, public affairs analyst, is still with us in the studio. Thank you so much for staying with us. Governor Douye Diri is now in the Creek House in Bayelsa State. He would be for the next 4 years.
Absolutely.
Until if he seeks to, recontest. But we've seen this development in Bayelsa State, and there's that. I would like to still bring in the national chairman of the APC, Adams Oshiomhole.
Okay.
When he says we would explore all legal means to reclaim our mandate.
Okay.
Is this crying over spilled milk? Or do you think that the APC might be considering going the route of the PDP in the case of Imo State? Are they even the same cases here?
The cases are completely different. And if you look at it very well, the Section 187 of the Constitution, which says that, I'm not a lawyer, so I'll just paraphrase, you can't contest an election as a governor. It cannot be, your nomination cannot be validated except you appoint a deputy. That's what makes your candidacy valid. So what that means, if anything happens in terms of documentation, regularization, affect your deputy, it directly nullifies your opposition. So that's what has happened here based on the Constitution. So because of the regularity and the documentation of the guy. So the people just thought this thing just came out to be. It has gone to federal, it came from Federal High Court. They got a judgment against the guy in Federal High Court. The appeal court nullified it before the Supreme Court now said there is no reason for the appeal courts to nullify that judgment. And prior to then, when they were even having their primaries, the court, they had two factions.
Yes.
And the other faction went to court and got a judgment that there was irregularities even in the other guy's documentation. But because one of them was a minister of state, used all his power to ensure this Lyon guy that was unknown came on board and became minister. So what happened in Imo was a different issue of saying 2 + 2 is 5.
But both parties seem to have hope that they can still reverse what the Supreme Court, has...
Are you talking about this Bayelsa?
Not both. In the case of Bayelsa, APC is saying that it will still
claim our mandate.
Yes, we'll claim our mandate. And the PDP in Imo is saying the same thing, that they're going to the Supreme Court, and they're hoping that the Supreme Court would actually reverse itself. But let me recall what late Justice Chukwudi Puta actually said, that we are final, not because we are infallible, but we're infallible because we are final, which puts paid to any hope at all that, they can have a different judgment from what the Supreme Court. That's the final architect.
But you know the challenge with
what is giving cause to this?
Yeah, because tendency? We have allowed politics to determine the play of things in a country, not system, not process, not a structure. Because the politicians have seen themselves to be more powerful than the Constitution. They've seen themselves to be more powerful than structure. They've seen themselves to be more powerful than institutions. So everything has been politicized. When the likes of Oshiomhole are talking, it shows they don't have respect for the rule of law. They don't have respect for institutions like the judiciary. They believe they can manipulate. They believe they can intimidate. So I would rather listen to somebody else in his party, a Keyamo, that gave an opinion, that applaud the judgments, that applaud everything that has gone. I would rather listen to somebody that has a legal mind than somebody that thinks like an activist. Everything he does is about activity. This is not activism. This is democracy. And democracy is backed by rule of law. And that's where we will stand. So if he is free to explore all the angles he wants to explore, and we will see where that leads. But the Supreme Court has spoken, and that's final.
All right, we'll have to leave it there on that final note. Gbenga Onitilo, thank you so much for joining us on the morning show.
Thank you for having me here.